right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Creative Maestro. This is the London series, and we have the supreme honor by being joined by one of the coolest Londoners in history, author, mentor, and educator, all the way from Hackney, Miss Danielle Ennis. Danielle, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. You know, just hanging in there, trying to maintain, trying to focus. And I actually have to thank you for having me waking up so early, because Danielle and I were just talking about me waking up on a Saturday. It's 7 a.m. where I am in New Jersey, and it's noon in London where Danielle is. And we were saying that the only reason that we wake up this early on a Saturday is probably for a flight. And it actually felt like a flight day today. So it was cool. It was a lot of excitement.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. I mean, I was very impressed, but I missed flights. But it's okay because we've got good things to do here too.
Absolutely. So, as a mentor, I feel like during these times, people are really leaning on you for support. What has that process been like in the past couple of months, especially starting with, the pandemic and then, leading up until now?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, I think one of the hardest things when you're a mentor or when you're just in any kind of supporting space, you have to be able to kind of go through any serious changes yourself, right? So me as an individual, I'm obviously having to deal with and process the pandemic, but at the same time, keep enough consistency to be able to support someone through their own journey. It's been challenging because I guess a lot of the young people I work with, they're trying to better their lives in different ways. It already takes a lot of maybe motivation or trying to keep their mind in the best place to make that progress. So to then be in a situation where something so large and outside of our control now has a part to play, it can almost take people off of the rails if they feel deflated, if they feel too disheartened. So it's been tough, but I think just remaining consistent, staying in touch, trying to find the joy, the positives along the way, just letting them know they're not alone, and letting people just present however they wish. One day they might be fuming, the other day they might be calm. But yeah, it's taken a lot of problem solving as well, trying to keep people on track even now. It's hard.
Yeah, it's true and completely understandable. And I just appreciate, speaking as someone who identifies with being an empath as well, I appreciate you, sharing that wisdom, that love, and just that support as an empath yourself. And out of curiosity, when did you first realize that you had these empathic abilities, and how did that transition to you being a mentor?
So I'd say, I've always been someone who's quite passionate. I've always had lots of friendships in my local area. I've always been able to, just to empathize with people. But I'd say in my early 20s, I started to feel a tug just to try and reach out to young people that maybe were kind of dealing with what I dealt with, but didn't know how to navigate what I refer to as the ends. Growing up in a certain part of London, how do you navigate that and keep your head above water, and come out the other side? So in my early 20s, I started to kind of have more conversations, even just with young people within my family, but then also through some work that I was doing during breaks in university. I was doing work with a youth organization. So I was already around young people that maybe needed that encouragement, whether it was my peers or people that were younger than me. And I just jumped into that full time really and started to tap into that space. And I knew I was gifted to do it in that way, because even all the staff that were older than me kept looking to me for leadership in how to deal with the young people, or what was the best practice for them. And as a young person, to be an advisor to people that are, in some cases twice your age, it shows that you must be able to do something right, to connect with people and help build and uplift the community. So yeah, early 20s.
That's amazing. And just a little context for everyone, listening. Danielle and I used to attend the University of Miami together once upon a time ago. And I actually got to witness this type of maturity, you know, in person. So it was very interesting to see, because whenever we would go out on Miami Beach, or, you know, South Beach, or SoBe as we like to call it, it was always Danielle who was essentially the most responsible one in the group. So everyone was looking to her to be essentially the motherly figure. So she isn't, you know, just talking to talk. She's authentically been this way for a while. So it's just a joy to see what you're doing now, and, you know, just to see your growth and development since Miami.
Oh, I appreciate that, bro. That was Miami days were the best days, honestly. And I cherish so many friendships that I made from that time. It was so crazy. I loved it.
Yes, I definitely do as well. And then, since you are from London and you spent time abroad, did spending time abroad shape how you view, let's say, community as a worldwide whole? Because I know, unfortunately, in society we like to separate people, whether it be race, whether it be class, whether it be, you know, gender, and or just nationalism. Like, did it expand your
Yes.
view of your collective view of the world?
Yes, yeah, it did. I mean, I love traveling, and the actual first time when I went to live abroad, I've moved a few times. So I've obviously grown up in London. I moved to Brighton for uni, which is just like south,
Mhm.
basically a little further south, not too far, but that was a different demographic again, mixing with different kinds of people than I grew up with, shaped different worldview. Even things like protesting, like my university had a lot of students all the time that were protesting about different things. So
Wow.
it even opened up my mind to just seeing that kind of activity on site. Like I remember trying to go to class, and there was one day where like all the students had chained themselves to like the front door of the building. So like we couldn't go in. So I'm like, what are you protesting about today? You know, so I saw that kind of activism for whatever those people were passionate about, right? And the reason why I went to Brighton was so that I could study law with American studies, so that I could get to America. Yeah.
Ah.
So I was already, yeah, that was my strategy. And actually, before I even touched on America, I also lived in Cuba for a few months when I was 18.
Wow.
And yeah, absolutely loved it. And afterwards, like found out apparently my great grandfather was Cuban. I never knew that before. But out there, again, I had such a love for the passion, the heart of Cuban people, learning more about their culture, what the struggle was as well, gave me such a my view of just the Western world, in the sense of how we have so much of everything and don't appreciate everything we have, completely came out of that experience of living in Cuba. They had so much joy and love for each other, even though they had less options than what we had, right? So I came back to the UK and I'm like, okay, so everyone's spoiled and miserable. Like, this is just ridiculous. We need more joy, you know, and more appreciation. So by the time I came to America, I'd had some of these different worldviews. And for me in the States, I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna lay everything aside that I think I might know, or things that I might have seen. You know, it's always through media, like through what I've seen in films or what I've heard through the music, and let me just see what I find with the people that I meet there. And it was so funny because the first few weeks they kept putting us all in the international group of students, and I was like, bruv, I'm not here to be with all the other British people. I'm going to be with the Americans.
Right.
And thankfully, I made some great friendships really quick. And I loved my time with. I loved the America that I saw through my friends, you know, and the time that I spent with my friends. I loved the ambition. Um, you know, there was really a heart of, you know, we're going to do our thing and we're going to work hard and we're going to be great at it. I loved that. I loved the sense of, you know, school spirit. You know, it's funny, we don't have it like that here in the UK. You know, when someone says you're a K, right, it means something.
Oh,
Here,
you
you
see this
know,
right here. The
I
flag and
got
everything.
some at home too. Yeah, I loved it because it was a sense of unity, togetherness, and then being able to just go around the States. I just love the landscape in that way. Like, it's so beautiful, so many different sites that you have, you know, in your own country. So again, I came home and I think I just took all the best bits that I really enjoyed about the States and my friends and conversations I had. And that's definitely contributed to who I am now as well.
Absolutely. And that makes so much sense because as someone who also identifies with Wanderlust, one of my favorite things is exposing myself to different cultures that I wouldn't see, inside my own country. So the simple fact that you can go abroad and then you can see that and you brought up a brilliant point about the media, how the media will represent a certain culture or society, which isn't accurate all the time. So sometimes you need to go in person and actually see it for yourself. Then you actually see the similarities that you have and how we're all similar as the human being race.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I loved it.
So now, so for those who don't know, Danielle is an amazing author, and I've been asking her all my questions because I do aspire to be an author one day. And what I appreciate the most about Mind, and Mind is essentially a development and guidebook for teenage girls who might be going through those similar things that you went through when you were younger. And I feel like it's so important because, as we know, as young minds develop, their frontal lobe literally isn't that developed. So they're stuck in micro thinking as opposed to macro and long-term thinking. So I thought it was a brilliant resource. And could you just talk about the inspiration of the book and how it's been received on your end?
Yeah, so thank you as well for those kind words. It's funny, I've kept a diary since I was 8 years old, right? So it's just so wild. So I've got these, I've got a whole bag full of diaries. It started off with me complaining about, I'm not allowed to play out today, to talking about family matters, to then, going into the turmoil of the teenage years. And what happened was, and I still keep a journal now. I just do it maybe more quarterly, but I journal my life basically. That's one of my other releases. So and it's so funny because I grew up in inner city, I grew up around gangs and stuff like that. So people might see me outside and then I'll go home after a frustrating day and then I'm writing in my diary. It's just so many different worlds, right? So I basically one day ended up reading through my teenage diaries and I was so stunned at how much I was feeling and going through. It was like a hurricane. I thought, what the heck? I didn't realize that I felt so much at that time. And it made me think, you know what, when teenagers say you guys don't understand, I thought, no, they're right. Because until I read through my own words, I was like, yeah, my teenage years weren't that bad. You just, because you summarize things from years ago, you can't remember. So I thought, okay, at that point I do lots of different bits of work. And at that point I was doing work supporting vulnerable or youth that are at risk, right? So again, just inner city work. And I'd often share parts of my life to try and demonstrate points or to start a discussion, or I might use a drama or a film and pick out a controversial part of that film or drama and make it a discussion point, just to bring it some life, right? So I thought, you know what, why don't I try and, see if I can create what I do in the classroom in literature, because people have always asked me to do lots of different work. I can't do everything, I can't reach everywhere. And it was almost like trying to put some of those sessions in a book. So it was difficult because it's not been done before like that. This is the live, storytelling of someone who's very much here and still breathing and then teaching at the same time. And so far, I've been blown away at how effective it's been for people. Because in a way, it's an experiment. I was like, okay, let me put my diary out there and put some tools in it and try and make it into a story and see if it can translate. And it has. So you've got families. I remember a lot of fathers reached out to me like, oh my gosh, I did not, it's like I've been struggling to deal with how to talk to my daughter or what could be going on through her mind. This has been so helpful to consider. Mothers have messaged where they've sat and read through the book with their young people. There's been mentors using it in Scotland. I heard there were social workers that had some in New York at one point as well. And then one of the top boarding schools for girls in the UK yeah, some of them have been excellent advocates in supporting the book and putting it in their library as well. So it's crossed, you know, ethnicities, crossed race, it's crossed class. It's been an effective tool for people, point blank period. And the young people, most importantly, they've really enjoyed it too. So they've just said to me that they like how real it is. It's helped them to actually have more empathy for other people. Interestingly, a mentor reached out and said one of my young people actually has started to apologize to her teachers because of a chapter that we read in your book. And again, one other friend was like, oh, my niece has got a better relationship with her mother after reading your book. Like it's done more than I even could have anticipated. And I'm just so happy, because that's the whole point. It's a tool, you know, for people and families and professionals. So it's good. It's good. And there's another one to come.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Definitely excited about that. And I just appreciate the overall vulnerability, because I would say, at least in Western society, we attribute vulnerability as a weakness, but in fact, it's a wonderful strength. And when you're able to be that authentic and transparent with others, it just, you know, it just resonates with other people in a much more transparent way. So I just think it's brilliant that you know, that you're able to do that, and then you're also seeing the benefits that other people get to, you know, to get from it, which I think is amazing.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, it wasn't until like right on the verge of like release date, I was like, oh my gosh, like what on earth are you about to do? But I said, you know what, I've seen how it can work. And I think with some of the most I've done work with young people that are, you know, struggling with mental health. So I remember working with a young lady. She came to me after she tried to take her life 3 times in a row, right? And I remember thinking, how on earth am I gonna, like, this is such a fragile situation, in the sense of, you know, I'm not with her 24/7. How can I create this link, and how can I, you know, how can we tap in close enough for her to know, even when she's by herself in her apartment, that she can still message and reach me? And I remember I shared an experience of something that had happened to me, and it was the first time she looked at me properly and lifted her head and fully engaged. And I said, you know what, that's the magic. And after that, I was like, that's what you need to do. Like, if it's going to take that to hook people in, for them to say, oh, so you do understand, then that was it for me. You know, it's the same. I've done work with young people facing addictions, or I've done a lot of work with gangs. It's the same. I use some of my own experiences growing up. And especially with the boys will look at me with actual respect, because they're like, Dee knows what she's talking about. She's not just talking at us. She's been there. She's grown up around it. So I've seen the power of a story. It takes courage. It takes more courage to share than it does to just sit there and be quiet and criticize, right? So I've learned that vulnerability is a strength, and I'll use it. I have to live my truth. I don't care. I have to.
Absolutely. And I think that's a wonderful example for the younger generation, because unfortunately they are correct. Usually the people who are in their lives as a authority figure, not necessarily their parents or anything. And like you said, sometimes their parents, but usually it could be a person who's trying to, you know, either a welfare system that, you know, that is getting paid to do social outreach, and perhaps can't really identify with that plight. So it's just really falling on deaf ears. Like, you're only here because you're getting a paycheck. You don't really identify with me, especially if there's some element of privilege involved.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So just for anyone who doesn't know, the book link is in the description to your link tree, Danielle. So the link tree link will give you a link to the book Mind, which is on Amazon, both UK and American one as well.
Yes. Yep. You can get them on both.
Okay. Absolutely. And I actually gifted it to my younger cousins who just became teenagers, because I know as an empath, I'm not going to be able to understand those things that you know, young ladies go through. So I thought it would be a great resource to them, and you know, they actually appreciated the book as well. So thank you for having that resource.
Yay. Yeah. The next one is going to be about healthy relationships.
Ah,
So that's the next
okay.
one coming out.
Is,
Yeah.
is this healthy
Yeah.
relationships
Yeah.
with people,
Because
or is it
it's
more
like,
specific on dating?
it's going to be a bit of both. It's going to be probably heavier. Well, yeah, it's going to be slightly heavier on dating. The reason is but it's going to link to both, right? I find that your mindset and your relationships are foundation, right, in life, regardless of your age. It's how your mind is doing, and it's how your circle's doing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
how you got people that are uplifting you or not. So a lot of the time, especially again working with young people around their friendship groups or the relationships that they're engaging in. So it will be about your friendships, or healthy ways to kind of engage with family maybe. But again, when it comes to relationships, romantic relationships, there'll be quite a few chapters on that as well. So yeah, but it will be enough to touch on all kind of areas. But yeah, so it's an interesting one, and that's going to come out in January.
Oh, okay. Definitely be looking for that. And also, you may be interested in being a guest on, I actually have a dating podcast platform called Poetic Charm. So perhaps you can one day grace us with your presence on there as well and give some advice.
Yeah, yeah. This is so funny. I'm up for it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Absolutely. And then so
It's like a challenge, you know, like, oh,
and then for people who may not know, could you give a brief background about Full Spectrum?
yes, okay. All right. So I'm also part of an education technology company. It's so funny because I was like, I thought you was going to bring it up. So we are basically we're doing work around neurodiversity. Okay. So just as a quick summary, so that might be those who have a different like neural wiring. So those who might be autistic, or they say dyspraxic, dyslexia, things like that. And what we've often found is, particularly, you know, within the journey of education, but also in the corporate world, a lot of the time learning and just working, people aren't adequately supported for them, the way that their mind is wired. So particularly in schools, this can end up with a lot of trouble for students, because sometimes there's people that are getting expelled for, you know, they say bad behavior, and actually it's because they're not engaged in the way that they need to. But at the same time, you've also got teachers and education bodies that are feeling the strain of trying to meet pupil needs and having so much limited resources within the schools. So basically what we've been developing is how we're going to merge AI and tech along with psychology and assessments to
Wow.
essentially find out more about how that person's mind is mapped, and then put in the content that will help them to develop that, as well as insights for professionals, and then comms and insights for families and homes as well. Because essentially it's a wraparound support. For years, I've been CEOs of, well, you know, we're like Soul family, so another brother, Andre, and we met through mutual friends that we've got in the social entrepreneurship space. And, you know, at the end of the day, he could see the work that I was doing in personal support and interventions with young people. So my approach has always been, it can't just be tick boxes, it can't just be one size fits all. I'd always try and understand a person and then literally make that whole support package bespoke to them. It has to be. Then I started reading into neuroscience because I find it so interesting, find out how, you know, we can change our minds in that way. And because of my own interests and insights and journey, it slotted right in with what it was that he was doing, in terms of just trying to find this team that got it and was ready to do this work. So yeah, I'm someone who, I like to do a lot of legwork before I talk too much on things. But yeah, we've had a lot of interest, and we've had interest from around the world. It's not just been the UK. We've got some incredible experts that, again, are known globally in the ed tech space, that are supporting us and love what we're doing. as well as the fact that during COVID, our idea or our solution, I should say, is coming to the forefront increasingly, because especially the social sector, they don't have the tech. So let's say, for example, like when COVID even started settling in, like friends that were maybe in finance firms, or, you know, friends obviously that are already working in tech, they were out and working from home from like February. Like in the UK, the firms didn't play. Like some of my friends have been like, we don't even know how long we've been at home now, right? But if you was working in the social space, they were on the ground for as long as possible, only had a bit of respite, and then went back out again, because they just don't even have the proper infrastructure. So there's been an increasing problem, because everyone trying to work remotely has also meant that some of the most vulnerable in our communities has actually, they've been at a loss during this time, because they haven't had the right support. So yeah, it's actually turning out to be quite timely as a solution. So yeah, that's what we're doing. We're merging tech and the social space for the benefit of neurodiverse individuals. And later down the line, from what we learn, we'll be able to map that out for all people, in the sense of, if you want to find out insights about your mind, you'll be able to do that, you know, just fine a few years down the line as well. So yeah, busy.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it sounds incredibly fascinating, because as someone who's also into tech and who appreciates the, let's say, the deliberate, conscious ability to create a neural pathway, and that's how you create habits. So you help people create those positive habits, their trajectory in life is going to be that much better. So I think it's amazing.
Yeah, it's exciting. You know, I like a challenge. It's been crazy, because for me, I'm just like in books all the time, because I've got to learn more about tech, and we've got, again, we're so fortunate. We've got such an amazing team, and there's people who, you know, we have all the expertise in the tech. But for me, I'm actually heading up. So I'm in the team now as a co-founder, but I'm also heading up. I'm the chief product officer, in the sense of I'm overseeing the whole product coming together. So that means I have to oversee and link in with the tech guys. It means I have to oversee with the designing, which I can't wait to just get some diversity into the imagery and the things that we use, right? And that means I have to continue to stay linked in with psychology, the psychology arm of it as well. So yeah, it's a lot to bring together, but it's like nothing, it's not impossible, and this is what we're doing. So yeah.
Absolutely. It's very exciting stuff. And I feel like that is a result of you being in the London area. And for those who haven't been to London, you know, because there's some people have not. I've been fortunate enough to be there, you know, go there a couple of times, dated someone who was a Londoner as well. Yeah. I actually got to live there during study abroad. You know, so I again, London's definitely going to be one of the places on my list that I would consider being a resident of, if, you know, once I become bicontinental. So for those who don't know, could you explain how wonderful a place and how diverse London is?
Yeah, and I didn't know you did a study abroad year here. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, in the summer of 2009, the University of Miami had a summer course. It was a summer abroad course, so it was 6 credits, and we got to stay in London in the Bloomsbury section. Yeah, because Jess actually did the same. She did the same program.
Yeah. No, I remember now. Okay. All right. So London, London is it's so diverse. You know, to be honest, I've always loved living here. The only thing that I make a joke about is I just wish we had more consistent sunshine. But we have got so many. It's so true. Like it's just like we have. Oh my gosh. I just feel like everyone's in London, really, in the sense of there's so many different cultures. I've even used to make a joke growing up. I used to say, you know, you'd make friends, and when you'd go into their house, it's like going into a different country, in the sense of you'll hear the music, you'll smell the mood, you know, you'll smell the food, and just to be able to enjoy the different cultures growing up. So even now, I've got friends that are in my area. There's a lot of Southern Asian people growing up. And so let's say, for example, again, lots of friends that have come from Africa, have come from Portugal, have come from Scotland, like just everywhere. There's so many places. I've had neighbors that are Brazilian, a lot of Eastern European, like there's just such a mix. And the good thing about that is it means that you're exposed to more if you're open-minded, okay? Which is, you know, it's a whole conversation at this time around the world. But yeah, you can learn so much about where people are coming from. And I know I've been to Asian weddings, beautiful. I've learned more about traditional African food. Definitely opened my doors and shared a lot of my heritage, which is Jamaican culture. But as well as that, it means that, yeah. All right, not bad. But yeah, the good thing as well that I find is it means that you're able to, people come with different thinking, right? If we're just all the same and we're coming from the same background, then our perception and our solutions or our ideas just look the same. So to talk with people that have just different minds is helpful sometimes to create solutions. So for example, like there's friends that do work, and my friends are Ghanaian, but they're also doing work that links back to Ghana. You know, I'm doing the same here with what links back to the Jamaican community. But people mix all the time. You know, we have such diverse places to eat. You know, it's not, I remember a friend actually, where is he from in the States? A friend came over and I said, have you had Turkish food before? And he was like, no. And I said, I love Turkish food. Let's go for Turkish, you know? And he had this big, like this huge platter. And he was like, oh my gosh. I said, I know, you know, it's great. Even little things like that, being able, because I love to eat, being able to enjoy those things all the way through to, okay, you know what, maybe let's talk on politics, or maybe let's talk on history, or it just changes the worldview, you know? You can just enjoy so much more, I think, if you're open to it. And I've always enjoyed growing up here for that reason, really. I've loved London. Even in terms of economics, in terms of opportunities, in terms of work, again, there's so many different opportunities. And even to see, due to tech, the way that people are creating their own companies or creating their own organizations, and again, being able to employ friends, or being able to, like, so much of my money often goes on freelancers because of all the different bits of projects that I do. You know, I have lots of different people that I work with in that sense, you know, so it's nice to be able to do that and to thrive in that way here as well. You know, we're all quite connected. Yeah. I've really enjoyed being here.
Absolutely. And I always got those vibes being in London. I just love the you know, the diversity, the inclusion, the celebration of cultures that sometimes we don't always see in places like America or other countries in the world. So it's I would say it's a proper melting pot. I feel like New York City definitely has a lot of different types of energy as well, but I think it's still a little bit more, let's say, segregated in terms of cultures than a place like London is.
Yeah. We're all doing. There is a lot of it just, you know, London's small in a sense of, you know, we all have to kind of, we're all alongside each other here. You know, we just are. I remember even funny times like the World Cup. I always find the World Cup hilarious because you can hear your neighbors, and if you didn't know what country they were from, you'll figure it out, you know. It's just hilarious. I'm like, it's like United Nations. Like, I remember one year, we had a Jamaican family upstairs that were next door, or a couple doors down, and then there were Brazilians a couple doors down, and then on the other side, I can't remember, but you could hear people cheering for their teams, you know. And it was just so funny because I was like, it's not United Nations, like literally, you know. And now obviously you have a flip side of it in terms of if there's people that aren't really that don't want to mix, and that usually happens outside of London. Outside of London isn't. I don't. The main cities have the same kind of vibe, but outside of London isn't. Yeah, it isn't as mixed. It's not quite the same story.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like it it shapes the world to be a better and more open place when you have all these cultures, you know, mixing and thriving together. So that creates that sense of unity within a human race as opposed to dividing it by, you know, ethnicities and class. So I think it's a great it's a great ethos to and a great environment to stimulate a mind.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, but I guess, we'll sit here as two people that enjoy and learn from other cultures, right? So for us, we see the value in that. And I think even here in London, because everyone is side by side, you have to just get along with each other. You're gonna have to learn, for example, some cultures are louder than other cultures, right? As in like some of their truths, right? So again, you're gonna have to learn and understand, or people are gonna have to have a level of understanding with each other. But I think that happens fairly well in London. But we definitely do enjoy different parts of each other's cultures in different ways. Even stuff like Carnival, Notting Hill Carnival. It's just so interesting to me because now so many people from around the world come for Notting Hill Carnival. And although it's kind of got its own past in terms of, that came particularly out of the Caribbean community that came here. So the Trinidadians in particular, now it's become such a big thing in the sense of people have understood, okay, it's a gathering, it's a day of enjoyment. It's a day to enjoy music, uplift, to have fun and represent your culture. But it has people coming from everywhere around the world, as well as in London now, just to walk through and look at the parades, look at the costumes, and just see that too, So yeah, I think as far as it goes for having different people alongside each other, like London's been able to do that.
Absolutely. And I just appreciate how open you are to different cultures. So I'm just asking out of curiosity, are there any other cultures and countries that you have planned to visit and experience and learn from in the future?
I haven't gone to like Asia as yet. That was one of the big. So there was a few plans that have changed.
Yeah.
I wanted to right. So I wanted to I wanted to start going around Asia, and I think the thing for me was I wanted to try and do a few places in one. So that's why I hadn't gone yet. But I wanted to do Asia, and I also wanted to see more of Africa. I almost went to Ghana in November last year with one of my good friends. She's Ghanaian, she goes back quite often. I like to see things from a local view. So me and her will definitely still go back another time. Also want to go and do a safari one day. I've heard safaris in Kenya is amazing as well.
Yes.
So yeah, more of Asia and more of Africa. I wanted to see more of Europe at some point before the whole Brexit thing, started to take a hold. But I'll still do that at some point. But I think the further traveling first, and so as soon as that's the next plans. Right? I said I can't keep coming back to Miami and Jamaica every year. I have to do something different.
Absolutely.
I've been to lots of countries. I've been to about 27. Yeah.
Wow. Oh yeah, that's very.
So what about you? Where like?
Ooh,
what's next on your agenda?
How much time do you got? Because you know me, I'm always plotting to travel someplace new. But at the same time, I love going back to places I've been to before. So because of the culture and vibe, definitely Toronto and London and Manchester. Because I'm a Manchester United fan, so definitely got to check out Old Trafford. I specifically have never been to Spain before, which is odd. So I have to check out Spain, you know, Barcelona and whatnot, and Ibiza, right? At least once.
Yeah,
Definitely more
yeah,
Africa. It is my goal to have my entire family, which will be a challenge, but I'm definitely up for the challenge to bring them to Africa and go on a safari and then take them to different
yeah,
areas, so like the Ivory Coast and Ghana and Liberia and
yeah,
things like that. In
yeah,
addition to Egypt, because I've been to Egypt before as well,
yeah,
and would be curious about South Africa,
yeah,
and of course Brazil. I haven't been to Brazil. Even my own parents have been to Brazil. I haven't been to Brazil, so I definitely got to
yeah.
check
Me
out.
too. Yeah, yeah, me too. I've gone to. I went to. But it was more actually to do with, to a degree, like overseas community work. But I went to El Salvador, um, and I went to Costa Rica. But I said,
Oh,
I want to actually go to different parts of the Americas as well. So, yeah,
oh yeah, yeah, big facts. And like you said, Asia as well. So obviously, Thailand, Vietnam, especially because I don't know about you, but for me, I
yeah,
routinely, like on a monthly basis, I check airline flights as well as Airbnb listings just to see what living in a certain place would like. Because for me personally, whenever I travel, I only do Airbnb, and I grew up as a person who absolutely
yeah,
loved hotels. But Airbnb, you actually get to feel like a local and actually have that lifestyle of living in that place. So for me, you're just able to soak up even more culture than you would at a hotel.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny. I'm kind of like a mixture. This is going to sound funny, but there's little things like I don't want to have to think. It depends where I go, because sometimes I know this is like a rest and reset kind of holiday, so I don't want to cook. I don't want to do nothing, but I always go out, right? But I just want to think about some of the practical things. And then it's so funny because the first time I went to a really nice Airbnb in Paris, met up with a friend from, another came. We went and met up after what? Probably about like 8 years. She just said, I'm coming to Paris. I said, I'm coming to link you there. Like, there's no way you're going to be that close. I'm coming. Um, but it was lovely. It was such a nice experience doing it that way and feeling local. It was funny when like we'd go out and we'd come back and maybe we need some food and we're like, so what are we gonna rustle up, But because the places used to close really early out there, like the food places would close quite early, and
Really?
I weren't used to that, and neither was she. But I enjoyed it. Yeah, yeah. We're usually just out here, I know for me, usually you can find somewhere that's always open till like 3 a.m., 2, 3 a.m.
Of
sometimes.
course, or at least that
Um,
delivers, right?
but it wasn't really like that. Yeah,
Wow. Okay,
yeah, there wasn't
that's good
really,
to know.
not really where we were. Yeah, I mean, neither did we. The first few times coming back from like a bar or a club or something, we'd be like, okay, let's just get a snack or something. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I'll definitely be doing more Airbnbs. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to get some fish and chips late night. Sometimes it's a necessity.
Yes.
So I actually saw on your website, which is phenomenal, by the way, that you're a member of the Royal Society of Arts. So for those who do not know, could you explain what that is?
Yeah. So, okay. So the Royal Society of Arts this is the tagline for it, right? So it's a hub for creative and innovative individuals who work to create solutions to society's largest challenges.
Mm.
Okay. So it's a historical fellowship. I think it's like 260 years old, something like that.
Wow.
So obviously it's always had a lot of its own interesting roots in terms of where the first philanthropists and things like that, who those groups of people were too. But let's say, for example, Charles Dickens was a member. Because he doubled up as a philanthropist, didn't know that. Then there's certain charity work. In the UK, there's a lady called Marie Curie that's well known in the UK for her cancer research work, but she was a member. Then you've got some controversial figures like Karl Marx, who was the one who penned communism. So the whole idea of communism, I guess that was what he thought, you know, was a new idea. And the whole aim is to try and make society progressive in some way. I ended up getting invited into it because of a friend that I met during a coaching course. And she was an older lady. She'd been doing a lot of work in social enterprise. She was a positive psychologist, and she just loved the way that I worked as a coach. And she was so impressed that she just said, look, I just really would love if we continue to stay connected after this and we can continue to coach each other. So again, you know, she was a senior to me, and I'm really fortunate at times because I've been able to work with a lot of seniors. And we carried on having a friendship. And then one year she just said to me, you know, I'd like you to really come and talk at a women's retreat. So this is just when I was starting to do little bits of kind of engagements that I was getting. So it was still stressing me out, but I kind of knew that this was coming, right? I knew, I kind of had an unction that it was coming, so I knew. So I said, okay, you know, I'll do it. But I was so scared all the way to I remember making the journey to the conference. I was just like, oh my gosh, maybe I'll just get it's hilarious. But I went down there and I was the youngest one. I was the only black one as well. And I was just like, okay, I'm in this kind of space again, but let me, you know, I'm going to come and talk and share. And apparently everyone was so blown away by what I had to say. I was talking about young people and best practice in the field. And what I didn't know was I was also talking in front of people who was working. I was just come and share what I've learned and how I teach and encourage others to work, right? Wow. So, yeah, so at the end of it, she just said, you know what, Dan, she's like, out of everyone that's spoken today, she said the people that they've come to talk to me about the most has been you. And she just said there's people that I would seek to impress in here, and you've impressed them too. And I was like, oh, okay, you know, awesome. And then she said to me, I'd like to extend the hand of fellowship to you. Now at the time, I'm coming from like the ends, which is essentially fellowship. Is this a cult? Like, what is she talking about? So I remember saying to her, I was like, okay, well, I'll just look into it. And she said to me, she said, yeah. She's like, go and have a look, read up online, and understand, you know, I need to be informed, right? So I just said, I'll go and have a think and read up about it. And then when I saw what it was about, I just said, yeah, you know, I'd like to be in. So she invited me in. And because she had been invited in as an honorary member, it meant whoever she extends the hand to, they have to accept them anyway. Oh. So I didn't have to apply. People can apply to go into the fellowship, but it just meant that all I had to do was say, yeah, this is me and this is my work, and that was it. So yeah, so it's been great because I didn't realize at first how far reaching the fellowship was. I didn't realize how global it was. A friend of mine, I remember going to visit a friend in Dubai. Her husband's a pilot for Emirates, so he's gone around to lots of different places in the world. So when we were all catching up and I'm telling him I'm part of this fellowship, he said to me, what? Like, what did you say? And I told him, and he said, do you know how many people are in that thing? I said, well, clearly I don't by your reaction, bro, but okay, cool. He said, just get involved and just meet as many people as you can. I said, okay, sure. So for me, it's a recognizable hub, a fellowship that's known. I can put the letters behind my name now, and a certain amount of people will know what that means. It can create leverage sometimes in conversations. We also get to have insight I pay attention to what topics they talk about, because I realize they talk about it in the fellowship before it then starts to be spoken about in the public sphere. So yeah. Like, for example, I noticed a few years ago, yeah, I was just watching, like, I remember a few years ago, they kept talking about AI. AI is good for the future. AI this, AI that. People were flying in from different parts of the world because we have a members house in Chancery Lane, which is a historical and kind of rich part of town, right? So I can go and have meetings there. I can go and study there, read there, use the library, whatever. So we'd also hold these events, and because of how much they were talking about AI, I was like, I need to pay attention to this stuff. And within about 2 years, I then started seeing people talk about AI publicly, you know, like, oh, more AI. So I was like, yeah, pay attention to what they talk about, because you just get a little bit of a heads up to essentially what's going to kind of come next.
And that's always a good thing to
So
be
yeah.
aware of, right?
Yeah, right. Just wow, just got to watch everything these days.
Absolutely. So
yeah. And it was good because there was only, I didn't realize there was only it was 70% men as well. So yeah, so one of the few women, and there's a lot of work to be done to change that as well anyway. But yeah, so I'm part of that now anyway.
absolutely. And what I appreciate the most is that the person who, you know, I guess recommended you, this kind of essentially paid it forward for the type of work that you've been doing. So I appreciate that her, you know, she was reaching out, and then I'm sure in the future you'll be doing the same thing. So I just think it's a wonderful philosophy to be a mentor and to bring people into situations and broaden their horizons, because it's ultimately going to make their life better and thus the world a better place.
Right. It's like, it's so important. Like, I believe wholeheartedly in that. I always have mentees in my life. I just seem to collect. I have it as a private and paid service, but I also take on whoever when I can, basically. So there's a young lady at the moment that I'm helping, just to set up basically initiatives within the community for young people. So I'm helping her. But I remember with that friend, it was so, like, I remember she said to me one time, she said, Dan, you have such an incredible mind and a way of thinking of ideas and solutions. And she said to me, don't let people access that for free. She said, that is a skill set. She said, for a long time, people did not tell me that. She's like, you remind me of me when I was younger. And she's like, do not let people sponge off your brain. She said, the fact that you can think of ideas, the fact that you're solution focused, those are skill sets. And I appreciated the fact that she, you know, took it upon herself to look out for me. And I've had other figures around me that have done that and have said, no, Dan, like, this is something that you do. You're great at this, and you should think about it with more value, or you should, you know, consider it in this way going forward. And yeah, she'd always placed value on me, and the same with her. She's asked me to partner in innovation programs before, to do with education, and it's an honor for me to do that, because her name is known by other positive psychologists in the field. So it's like, for me to be, again, associated with her, and for her to take pride in my work and I to take pride in hers, then again, it broadens my circle at the same time. Win-win. I like win-wins.
Oh, I see. Now you're speaking my language, because for me, I can identify with that as well. And luckily I had someone tell me, Josh, you have so many innovative and solution-based ideas. So myself, I'm making a transition to making that, you know, a service, because that I would have to consider it. And again, someone who I know identifies with being faithful, it's definitely a divine gift that I've been blessed with. So I definitely want to use that to, you know, help as many people as possible, but at the same time also be, you know, an entrepreneur and leverage that and be like, okay, I should be doing this full time. And then, because it does give me joy. So anytime people are talking about their passions or their skill sets, and my ears perk up, I'm instantly animated. I'm like, oh, perhaps you should do X, Y, and Z. And they're like, you know what, Josh, I literally never thought of that.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. It's just good. Do you know why? Because that's a currency of fulfillment as well. You know, like, people, I don't know, like, I'm passionate, right? I can't do things half-heartedly. It's just not what I'm, just not like that. But, you know, it's an amazing thing if you're able to do something that you're passionate about. You'll receive pay for that, and then you're also getting the fulfillment of using that gift and seeing how that empowers or equips someone else. You know, it's the best part of both worlds, being able to function in that way. And it's definitely worth seeking. You know, I always say, because I've got a degree in law, right? I always say it was a family plan. It wasn't what I was passionate about. And it was good that I did the degree, because I've learned so many transferable skills, and I do a lot of advocacy work anyway in the community as a result. Usually when I'm defending someone or when I've written a report, people are always like, okay, Danielle's done it. Like, it's just, you know, like she writes it really well, or okay, point in case I understand what you're saying. But, you know, it wasn't for me to go down that particular route. You know, I wouldn't have enjoyed it. And I also know people that grind so hard doing things that they hate, that are rich, but they're miserable. Like, their mental health is like out all the time, you know? So you kind of have to be careful. But I do think if you're great at what you do, then I do believe that money does come and increase, and you should also ask and make those demands when you need to as well. There's nothing wrong with both. And I think my whole thing is, I do things that empower and impact the community and beyond that, right? But there's no reason why that shouldn't be well paid at the same time as well. So I do it my way, and I make money in different ways due to that.
Yes, and that's amazing, because it is important to know your actual worth and value, especially in the marketplace, because unfortunately, like you said, it's, to me, it's common sense. I feel like for us, it's common sense. Win-win scenarios are the best, but unfortunately in the world today, especially with the hierarchs, they more prefer of a win-lose scenario, and let's say in a dominant type of way. So I feel like now is the time where we're seeing the transition, where people are going to be more open to, especially our generation, to win-win scenarios. It makes everything simpatico. It's pleasant. It's brilliant to be around. It's great energy flowing around.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's the currency we want. That's all we want.
Absolutely. Well, Danielle, thank you so much for joining us today, all the way from London. And I hope this isn't the last time that we do an interview, because this has been incredibly joyful. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. So good to see you. I can't wait to see you in person too. Eventually, it will happen. It's gonna happen.
Absolutely, because London is definitely on the first destination.
Good. And yeah, we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. So enjoy your day, and thank you once again.
Yeah, you too. Have a good day.